Parashat Tetze speaks about in Perek Chav Beis Pasuk Yud. It says about plowing. It says Loi Sacharish Pasuk Yud Loi Sacharish B'Shar v'Chamar Yachtov. It says you shouldn't plow with a shar and a chamar together. If you have an ox and you have a donkey, so you can't plow with them together. Now, what does that mean? What's the idea? Why can't you plow with a shar and a chamar together? So the chinuch says, right? What does that mean? A shar is one type of animal. A shar is an ox, and a chamar is a donkey. Question is, what about a different animal? Let's say a cow and a ox, a cow and a donkey. So the Gemara learns out it means any types of animals, any types of different types, any minim, different min, like a cow and a lamb. You can't plow with both of them together, and it doesn't only mean a lamb or anything. It also says you can't not only plow, you can't even lead the wagon. Let's say you used to have like a horse and buggy. So they also can't have two animals leading your wagon, two different animals. Only the same type.
So it's not just plowing; it's just
right.
The wagon.
Right. So So it speaks out. It means right. Lav dafka charisha. It doesn't mean only plowing. It means any type of malacha. Also to do dash. Dash means to thresh. Used to thresh and separate one part of the grain from the other, or to pull a wagon. So it's very, very applicable to make sure it's two horses. If it would be a horse and a cow, you can't have it pull your wagon. Now, what's the reason for this mitzvah? The reason for this mitzvah, it's interesting. The Rashi doesn't give us the reason, but there's different reasons brought down. One reason is brought by the Ibn Ezra. Ibn Ezra says if you have a shar is much stronger than another animal. Let's say a shar will be with a cow, an ox with a cow, so the ox will be going faster. So it'll be putting pressure on the cow. So that's not good. We don't want to, we want it to be evenly paced. Therefore they said you can't put the two animals together. Baal HaTurim says a different shot. Baal HaTurim says that the shar, the ox, if it's kosher, so it chooses cud. So it chooses cud, so it's going to look like it's always eating. So therefore you can't put it together with a non-kosher animal, because it's going to, the non-kosher animal thinks that the kosher animal is always eating, so it thinks that it's missing out on food. So from this Baal HaTurim, it's a very interesting reason. It seems it's only with an animal which is pure and an animal which is not kosher. Kosher with a not kosher animal is the problem. But if you put two kosher animals together, it would seem that it would be okay, according to that reason.
But there's different sizes and weights and stuff. Animals are not physically the same.
Right.
There's a physical difference. So when it comes to plowing, at least, the physical difference would mean the smaller animal will be more stressed. Right.
So that's the Ibn Ezra's reason. According to Ibn Ezra, you can't have a big with a small animal. Right. That's the idea behind shar and hamar. But according to the Baal HaTurim, Baal HaTurim, he says no, it doesn't really mean like, it doesn't really have to do with that. It more has to do with tameh and tahar, if it's kosher or not kosher. Now, the Rambam, it seems like the Rambam went along the lines of the Torah, because the Rambam says it only, from the Torah is only making an isser, only saying that you're not allowed to do a tameh animal with a tahar animal.
Yes, the example gives.
Because what's the example of the Torah?
Yeah.
The example is Loi Sacharosh V'Shar V'Chamar Yachda. The pasuk that we saw, don't plow with a shar and a chamar. So to get the our animal anatomy straight, right? Shar is kosher, chamar is not kosher, right? So shar and chamar, the pasuk picked two animals. One is kosher, one's not kosher. So the Rambam said, only these two types, only two different. One is kosher, and one's not kosher. That's the only time that one is going to do when we'll get this aveira of plowing with the two animals together, or leading the wagon. But if you have, let's say, a horse and a donkey leading there at your wagon, then it won't be forbidden from the Torah. Maybe the Rabbanan said you shouldn't do it, the Rabbi said you shouldn't do it, but from the Torah it won't be Aser.
According to the Rambam.
According to the Rambam. And it goes good with, I'm saying, with the Tur, the Baal Turim on the bottom of the Chumash says, but the reason why you can't do this together is because the shar, the ox, which is kosher, chooses cud. So it looks like it's always eating, and the other animal will be jealous. So that could be...
I just want to mention, when I was younger, we used to go to a small town, my mother was born, and I've never seen a cow with an ox towing the earth. I always seen two oxes, never a cow. That's what I'm talking about the Gentiles, not the Jews.
But let's say
why would they accept that?
Why do they do that?
Yeah.
No, it could be practically an ox is the strongest.
Well, that's the way I was given to understand.
Right. But the question is, let's say you have a small farm and you have an ox and a cow, or an ox and a mule. That's where you'll just make a little patchwork and take your cow, put it together with a donkey. Now the question is, are you allowed to do that? Oh.
I've never seen that for the reason because the cow isn't as strong as the ox.
Okay. And they had two ox in there.
But
there were always two ox.
But actually, it's not that.
Or even one ox.
But the question is, what will be when you have a big load and you only have one ox?
Yeah, and that's not.
And you have one cow.
So you go twice.
Yeah.
Twice.
Depends how big the load is. Maybe you need to take it one time. So that would be the question on a smaller type of farm or a wagon.
Family farm might only have one of each animal, whether for milk, one for this, one for that.
Well, that's what
and it would probably be not that uncommon.
Right. So that's the question here. So the Baal Turim holds like that. On the other hand, the Ibn Ezra, his reason was because one is stronger than the other. So he held like you're saying that it depends if it's strong. So it doesn't matter whether it's a kosher animal or not kosher animal. There it seems like if it's big or small. So along came the Rush, and the Rush actually argued on the Rambam. The Rush said, no, it doesn't matter. Any type of kosher, not kosher, the only thing you have to look at is that it should be what species. Is it the same species or a different species? If it's two different species, an ox and let's say a goat, then that is a prohibited from this Isser. That's what the Rush held.
Why isn't an ox kosher?
No, an ox is kosher. An ox is kosher. Just to get to go through the different. Let me see if I have. Yeah, go through a few animals. The ox is kosher.
An ox is kosher.
Ox is kosher, right? An ox is right. A goat is kosher. A sheep is kosher, and a deer is kosher. That's the more common animals that are kosher. On the other hand, the ones that are not kosher are just about everything else, but they don't have those two signs. They don't have the chew the cud and split hooves. So that would be, let's say, the camel. The camel chews its cud but doesn't have split hooves, which is interesting. Okay. In any event, but a donkey is not kosher, an elephant is not kosher, a dog. So all these types, if you pair it up, that would be a problem. Now, the question is like this.
What becomes of B'kiyach Nefesh?
If what happens? If they need to pull a wagon and there's no one around?
Or you have to eat a dog.
Well, if you have to eat the dog, you can eat the dog. Pikuach nefesh, if someone's in danger, you can eat a dog. You can eat the dog, yes. If someone's life is in danger, the Shulchan Aruch says, the Shulchan Aruch even deals with what bracha, if you make a bracha on that. I believe Shulchan Aruch in like Simon Reish Hay, I think it says you make a bracha. Which bracha now is a new question. What bracha do you make on a chazer?
What happens? What happens if you come down in a God forbid, in a in some kind of or situation where you have nothing but to eat. Is that possible?
So you're allowed to eat it. It's a mitzvah to eat it. It says, "V'chai b'hem, shmartem me'oid es nafshe sechem." You have to watch your life, and if you don't have anything to eat, then you have a mitzvah to eat it. It's a mitzvah to eat it. You could do almost any aveira if someone's life is in danger, except for avodah zara, right? Gila, right? Shvius stomach. Except for 3 aveiros, you could do any aveira if someone's life is in danger. Right?
Well, I can tell you a fact that in the altogether 1942, there was no meat, and the German brought in some horse meat. I don't know if it was slaughtered or it was during the battle they lost the horses and they brought in the meat, and the Batayer said that we should eat it.
Who said it?
The rabbinat from said that it's allowed to eat and we should eat it.
Oh, so that makes sense.
These people who wouldn't eat it have an aveira.
Right. Well, if they're really right, if anyone who's hungry and they weren't getting proper food nourishment, then they could eat that, right? Yeah. Very good. So now the question is here. So there are 2 views now. There's the Rosh. The Rosh says it's any type of animal that you put together with a different type will be this issur of loy sacharosh, shar v'chamor yachdav. The Rambam says it doesn't mean any animal. It has to be 2 things. It has to be 2 different species, and one of them has to be kosher, one of them has to be not kosher. But if it's 2 different species and they're both kosher or they're both not kosher, then there wouldn't be a problem. And that's not the issur. Now, the question is, there's a big question that the Rosh himself asked for the Rambam, and that question was from the Gemara. There's a Gemara here, one of the Gemaras is in Chulin. The truth is I didn't copy it, but the Gemara says in Chulin that there was, I'll just read it to you outside. Reb Abba told his shamish, he told his one who was helping him out, he told him, go check. He was about to go to load up, make his animal, get it loaded up. So he said like this, he says, go check, it was I think a mule. So he said, go check to see if the mule, there are 2 mules here, see if they're the same type, see if they have the same types of mouth and ears and nose, because if it would be different, he said, then you can't put them together.
Wild donkey.
Right, a wild donkey. You saw this once?
No, but something Kilayim.
Oh, so he said there were 2 donkeys. So he told them it was 2. Now, if there are 2 different types, if they would have, let's say one would have it, right? The Gemara speaks about one type of chicken who has like a certain type of feature that's on the inside, and the other type of chicken has that feature on the outside. So that's 2 different species. The Gemara says it's 2 different minim. So here too, he told them, go see if all the features are the same as the nose and the mouth. And he says, if they look similar, then you could hatch them up. How do you say? Load up team them up together. Right? Good.
So even among species, they have to be similar. I mean, you can get one cattle that of one species, like you have Angus and Holstein or whatever, the different ones, but some are bigger, much bigger than the other.
So the different species that we're talking about here have a very different nature, also, I think.
Yeah, so if they're the same species, the Rambam speaks himself about. Let's say you have a wild chicken and not wild chicken.
Okay, yeah, a wild turkey and a regular turkey. I mean, there's a big difference.
Yeah, so if you look in the Rambam Halacha Hey says that if you have like a wild type and one that's from settled, like a wild shar, a wild ox, and a not wild ox, so the din is on that, or a different type, you're allowed to put them together. Because they're the same type, like you're saying. If they're one's wild, but it's the same general species.
But the Roth, I know in Kilayim that it does classify that they're called donkey, but they are different species.
So it depends on each case, because he says this type of goose, which has one type of goose has this, let's say its eggs, like it's whatever type of feature on its body is on the inside, and another type of goose has it on the inside. So that is already called, that feature makes it so different than a different type of goose that's called two different types, two different types, and that is aser. That's klayim. That would be klayim. You can't put them together. That would be two minim. So that would be two different types. That would be aser. So that's the din. Depends on what exactly it is. So what happened in this story was that Rabbi Abba told his shamash, go look to see if they have similar features, and if yeah, then you could team them up together. So he went and he looked and he teamed them up together. So the Gemara learns out from there that we learn out from here, we can learn out something. We can learn out that a siman is deraisa. The Gemara has a question. How do you know different things? Let's say I want to come and get back a lost object. Let's say I call out, who found the phone? So who lost the phone? So you come, you say you lost the phone.
I lost the phone.
So now, how do I know it's yours? Am I allowed to give it back to you if you just say you lost the phone?
No, you have to acknowledge about some kind
You have to have a siman.
of
Right, good, you need a siman. Now, what is a siman? So the siman you'll say is that it's black and it has a white paper on the back. So that's a good siman. Now, the questions like this is the following: is that something that I can rely on? That the question is that on a Torah level that the Torah says that I can rely on a siman, or is that just the Rabbi said? The Rabbi said you can rely on a siman because the rabbis have the power to say hefker bez and hefker. It should be hefker. It should be ownerless. On what level, right? Which means if the rabbis say, the rabbis have certain power. The rabbis could say there's a certain kinyan called dalet amas, 4 amas. That kinyan, that acquisition says if you are sitting right here and you see on the floor next to you dollar or something, if it's in your 4 amas, the Rabbanan said you acquire it. Called kinyan dalet amas. So now, how could the rabbis come along and say that $5 there should become yours? How could it become yours? It has to be like an ownerless object. But how does it work? How does the kinyan dalet amas work? So the Gemara speaks about it above and see it, but because it's in my 4 amas, that's how it becomes mine. So the idea is the Rabbanim have the power to say hefker. They could say this is ownerless, hefker, bez, and hefker. They have the power to make certain property hefker. So, what's the reason why when I give back this phone to the owner, I can rely on the siman? Is it on only the Rabbanan, that the Rabbanan have the power to say certain monetary activities? They could say you should rely on the siman and give it back. Or is it from the Torah? Is it that the Torah recognizes that a siman is a proof it's yours? If you give me a good siman, a siman is like 2 witnesses. It's like 2 Adam. That's the Gemara's question over there. The Gemara in Bava Metzia asks this question.
What's the difference between how does it come out? If it's someone else came along and gave you the same siman, so
you would have to measure out. Let's say someone else brings a different type.
No,
they don't bring siman. Let's say someone brings Adam.
Right.
So we have to go into the Gemara. The Gemara will ask your question. But from this Gemara, at least with Rabbi Abba told him, look at the 2 donkeys, see if they're similar. I mean, if you could rely on the fact that they're similar to be a siman, that's a sign. The fact that they have their ears in the same way, that's a siman. So you see that he held siman is deraisa. That's what Rashi speaks out. You see that siman is a Torah. The Torah recognizes a siman because the Torah tells you you can't plow with 2 animals together. And Rabbi Abba said, well, just check, see if the siman is good. If the siman is good, then you could plow. That means you're relying on this with a Torah level to say that if they have the same features,
So the Rambam would
That's
need
siman. That's a siman that they're both the same animal, and on a Torah level, you could plow with both of those animals.
So the Rambam wouldn't need that because as far as he's concerned, the differences are so obvious. You don't need siman.
One second.
But
What?
that's contrary to the Torah.
No what?
Because the Torah says that you can do it. But the Rabbi has posted that you can't.
No, the Torah only said you can't plow with two different species. But here we're relying on the sign, the fact that the ear is in the same place and the nose and all the features are the same. That's a siman. That's a sign. Those signs are very strong to us. Those signs state that this is the same animal, and it's not shar v'chamar. It's shar v'shar. It's the same animal. So you're allowed to plow with the same animal. Because you're relying on that siman. That siman, that sign that it has the same ear at the same place, that's a sign on a Torah level that says that they're the same animal. Right? Does this make sense?
Definitely.
Good. So now what? Now what's your question?
So the Rambam wouldn't have a shaila on that siman anyway, because he would say the Raisa, it's only a problem when they're very, very, very different species. One's tameh, one's tahara, one's pure.
The Rabbi says
So
if one is tameh, one is tahar.
He's not relying on the siman at all. So he would say in the case of this Rav in the Gemara, that's only going to Rabbanan, that you're worried, whether it's so then siman is not the Raisa, it's
So now
Rabbanan.
you're touching on the question. How could the Gemara say that we learn out from here that a siman is from the Torah, but according to the Rambam, if they're both, let's say, kosher, or they're both not kosher, what?
They look similar.
So let's say they look similar, so you could rely on that to say they're the same animal. But let's say, so it means you're relying on the siman to rule for you that they're the same animal. You had a question: is it the same animal or not the same animal? But the problem is, let's say it's a question. Maybe they're not the same animal, which means that's your suffix. Your question is, it's a suffix. Now the question is that a suffix from the Torah or a suffix from the Rabbanan? Huh?
Doubt.
Huh?
Doubt.
That's a doubt. What's your doubt? Is it a Torah suffix? So right, we have a Rabbi Abba theme. The Gemara said we have a Torah suffix. Can he plow the two animals together? Can he plow with both animals together? So so Jonathan here is asking that according to the Rambam said that if it's both, let's say both tahar animals, both kosher animals, then that would not be a Torah prohibition of lo sachar lo shar v'chamar. Because you need two things. You need it also to be one kosher and one not kosher. Here, they were both mules with Rabbi Abba. They were both mules. Right? So if they're both mules, so it won't be from a Torah. The worst it could be is Rabbanan. But they were both mules, so it can't be an Issur from the Torah. It can't be a prohibition from the Torah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a Rabbanan, it's the same animal. But how could the Gemara call it from an Issur from the Torah? It's a prohibition. So from here, you see a proof from this Gemara to the Rosh, because the Rosh says that it's only any two species. The Rosh himself, when he rules, the Rosh says the other way. Rosh says it doesn't matter whether they're kosher or they're not kosher, they're pure or they're impure. Any animals that you have, if you put two species together, any animals at all will be the problem that the pasuk says will sacharosh, shar v'chamar. And therefore the Rosh says this Gemara is beautiful like me, because the two mules, if they're two different species, it will be a problem like sacharosh, because they're two species, and it doesn't matter. They both happen to be pure, or they happen to be impure. A donkey would be impure, but the problem is that's not allowed. It's not allowed from the Torah. And therefore he said, that's what I see, a siman, a sign that I see the same facial features. That sign could tell me on a Torah level that this animal will be this type of animal. And therefore it will be, let's say, the same and it's allowed, or it will be different then it won't be allowed. That's how he rules. The only question I'll leave you off with is the Mishnah. The top Mishnah in Klayim. The Mishnah is a little problematic, because the Mishnah on the top of the page says, what type of animals can't you put together? So it says the following. It says a behema with a behema, one type of behema with another behema. Chaya, right? A behema is a domesticated animal that you have in your house. For example, what would you say is a domesticated animal? A sheep, a goat, that's a domesticated animal. Interestingly enough, a dog is not a domesticated animal. A dog is a chaya. A dog is a wild animal.
It's just acting the way it does normally. It's.
Although some people have it in their house, it's not domesticated.
It's because of the instinct of the animal.
But
where sheep has got the same instinct than a dog. Comes from another family.
Yeah. Now, and a sheep, people they raise the sheep. They raise it on their farm. Dogs are wild. They're wild, right? That must be the reason, and therefore the Rambam calls that a wild animal. It's a chaya. So that's like one example. There's different examples of what's wild, but basically, just to give you a few examples, so a donkey would be a behemoth. A donkey would be domesticated, or a cow. On the other hand, a elephant would be a chaya, a wild animal. Okay, so those are a few examples. Now, the Mishnah says to do klayim, it's a behemoth with another behemoth. That would be taking one behemoth, a cow, with an ox, with a goat, with a ram. All these are behemoth with a behemoth. So that would be klayim. Or a chaya with a chaya, taking an elephant with a donkey. Or a chazir, a pig. That's also a chaya. Interestingly enough, let me just make sure 100%. No, I'm wrong. A chazir is a behemoth. Chazir people raise on their farm. A pig, it's a domesticated animal. It's not like a wild, running around. So a chaya, let's say that would be a chaya. But any types of behemoth with a behemoth, chaya with a chaya, or behemoth with a chaya, or mixing one wild animal with a domesticated animal, all of that is klayim.
How's about the horse?
Or a horse. Horse is a case which would be domesticated, right? That would seems to be a domesticated.
Some wild horses too?
I don't know.
Well, the wild horses that we have are actually not truly wild. They're just horses that were left. Like in the States, one state they have a lot of wild horses, but that's because they were horses that were just let loose, and they ended up living and surviving on their own. But they're not by nature come from the wild. There's no such thing as that.
Right, by nature, people raise horses on the farm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So that's domesticated.
About the wild horse.
Yeah.
No, there's no such thing. And there's horses that are in the wild, but there's no natural wild horses.
Yeah, but a horse.
Because
Say a yearling is born in the wild. Then it's a wild horse.
Well, I guess technically.
Okay. You'll have to see, but the species itself is a domesticated. Yeah. So therefore, so the Mishnah says whether you have a behemoth with a chaya, you plow with a horse and a cow together. The Mishnah says all of them is a problem. All of them. To hire whether it's a kosher animal with a not kosher animal, or kosher with a kosher. All of these you cannot plow together. So the question would be, how does you see from here, the Mishnah seems to say clearly it doesn't matter whether it's kosher with not kosher or kosher with kosher. That means, two kosher animals, but different species, the Mishnah seems to say you can't put them under the plow together. So just to answer how the Rambam would learn this, so interestingly, the Rambam would read the Mishnah that you'd have to read it, that the whole beginning of the Mishnah is really part of the last Mishnah. That would be referring to, the beginning of the Mishnah would be referring to mating two animals. There's a different prohibition. You cannot put two animals together and mate them. That is any animal. Doesn't matter whether they're both kosher or they're both not kosher. That any two animals, that for sure, one's not allowed to mate two animals. So the interesting pshat that he says, interesting explanation, is that the whole beginning of the Mishnah, first 5 lines saying you cannot mate behema with a behema, chaya with a chaya, or a chaya with a behema, all these different types. But the last line of the Mishnah says a new idea. To put them in a plow together, that has to be a tameh with a tahir, a kosher animal with a not kosher animal. That's the only way to have the prohibition. If it's kosher with a non-kosher, so he would like start the Mishnah in the middle, right? Like last line, tameh with tar with tameh. That is the only issur of plowing. But if they're both tameh, they're both kosher, that there's no problem putting them under the same plow. That's how they explain this Mishnah. Okay, very good. We'll stop here.